Well, all right. Thanks, Jeremiah, and very excited to kick off a conversation today. As mentioned, I'm Jason Kelley, and I run the IBM blockchain business globally, and am a proud member of the exec committee of the Austin Chamber. And today, I'm honored to be with my good friend Robert Smith from Vista, and I'm very excited to have a conversation about what we're seeing collectively in Central Texas and Austin around skills and education and investment. So Robert, hey, great to have you. Glad you're well and good to be here talking with you today.
It's so good to see you and glad you're well as well. And, excited to talk about all the opportunities we have as Texans to move forward in this world of software and technology.
Great. Well, I'll tell you, start right in on that because, you having achieved all that you have through investment in skills and people. At the Chamber, we have done a lot of work with our Opportunity Austin and also the Direct to College 70 effort. And all of that's been to improve all strategies around college, career, military readiness, and also what we do with the schools directly to get our underrepresented and challenge students into schools, into getting those credentials that they need. Now, that's an ongoing challenge. It's not new. And as we try and do that, what do you see as high value targets of investment in Austin? And how should businesses approach those investments so that we can improve the outcomes that we're getting out of that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jason, that we should, probably spend weeks really delving into. At its highest level, what people have to really start to embrace is an understanding of how the world has turned digital. We've been talking about this fourth industrial revolution for a number of years. And I think that many folks don't embrace all of the implications of it. What has happened is there's been a complete distribution of computing power globally. The connectivity of that computing power has enabled 7.5 billion people to be reached on this planet. But the short answer is, only 29 million or so of us actually know how to write code. And what we have to think about as Texans, as Austinites, is how do we enable our community to be fully activated? And what I mean by that is fully activated in the ability to participate in this digital economy, which means we have to have digital literacy, not just as a user and an interfacer, but as a creator of digital constructs. And that starts, of course, folks my age are truly digital immigrants, whereas folks a little younger are what I call the digital natives. And it's those digital natives in the K through 12 that we need to train and enable and provide on-ramps for them to participate in multiple levels in the digital economy. In some cases, it would be as a business user of software, a teacher, and delivering capacity to students to learn how to program, how to code, how to utilize technology to bring more efficiency in the work that they do. And in some cases, at the higher end, what you do, understanding, blockchain, artificial intelligence, and what I call the next generation of accelerants in the world of software that are going to propel all economies globally forward. We have to understand and think about ourselves as a community of Austinites, and frankly, a community of Americans. And so when you say, what's your highest value add investments? It's people. It's simple. It's people. All the people that we can touch, we should enable to become more effective, productive members of the community that can now deliver capacity to drive our economy forward. We as a country call it 350, 360 million people, depending on who you talk to. And there are other countries out there with 3 and in some cases 4 times our population. And as they become more digitized and enabled, they will have that much more opportunity to enable their economies. So we have to continue to lead, which means education, training, mentorship, all the things that have led, folks like you and I to be able to participate in the economy at the levels we do today. We have to create more on-ramps for all citizens and all citizenry in the U.S. To participate.
So, Robert, you hit on something there, the digital natives. And I start thinking, as you say, old, I get to shave my head, so no one gets to see my gray. So I can claim, I get to claim, I'm 30 yet again every birthday with many, many years of experience. Now, you hit on something there when you talk about, you and I came from what was an underserved community and very much underrepresented in the fields that are technical. And as we know here in Austin, we have some 58,000 jobs that are in the STEM related fields. And when we look at our underserved, underrepresented populations, what can we do to increase their representation in filling these types of jobs? They're digital natives. Some say, well, maybe they're just not as interested in STEM occupations. And I would say that's not true. It's how do you expose them? So in your thought, what could we do to better engage our Austin area students to get them moving forward and filling some of these gaps?
Sure, there are multiple ways to do it. One simple way, of course, is internships. I've been promoting, touting, and engaged. We built a platform called InternX that basically we now have over 12,000 African-American students within the U.S. who are on the platform. I think we have 180 or so corporate partners. But part of it is just exposure through internships. I started my career in exposure when I was in high school, 17, working with an internship at Bell Laboratories, which changed my life. And so I would encourage every single business in Austin to expand their internship program. In this age of COVID, we've got some systems and tools where you can actually do it from a remote position, but you've got to create the exposure as kind of the first dynamic. The second thing is to provide ways for students to gain access to training and skills training. We've built some learning management systems, for instance, on our platform that can do that. But I think you have to think about the coding academies as being ways to approach it. One of the things we've done in Texas is with one of our groups called Empower, which actually creates certification programs for high school graduates or returning veterans, where you can become a certified technician on various platforms. And in some cases, entry level 9 months. In other cases, it might take a year or two. But it changes the whole dimension from people who are making $14, $15 an hour to making $60,000 a year. Going through these training and coding programs. You've got to dedicate yourself to it, of course, but that will enable you to participate. And of course, at the K through 12 level, we've got to drive coding as more of a requirement as opposed to an option for students. They need to learn. You may end up being a programmer at IBM or one of the Vista companies, but you should understand the structure of programming, the impact it has, and how we can use that to drive forward all of the, I'll call it the productivity activities across all areas of the economy. And again, internships, I think training and certification programs, and of course, entry-level, I'll call it education systems, so people get greater familiarity with the power of what programming can provide in a business construct and frankly, in an educational environment.
Well, you mentioned your internship at Bell Labs made me, I've heard the story before of how you were a high school student at that time, I believe. Yeah, and you were persistent saying, let me in. And it was the story I've heard is, when the MIT student couldn't show up, the MIT college student, they called you in high school, come take this internship.
Right. I think I tell people it's before the age of answering machines, and I was probably the only one that had a parent at home when they called that answered the phone and took a telephone number so I could call them back. And so, technology in that case, the absence of it actually helped me.
Right.
A lot does have to do with because I agree with your presupposition that most students that I talk to absolutely have an interest in participating in the economy and in the digital economy, and many of them just don't know where or how to access it. So we need to create more available points for them to access it, which includes broadband to every home. So that the access there and the training there can actually occur. I mean, those are some of the elements of businesses, and we're focused on that with some of our companies. How do we ensure we can provide more on-ramping and access to the digital opportunities through broadband connection and learning management system so they can gain access to.
And I think you bring out that, what I think is a solid point about access, because even we've now all seen that in the current environment, in the pandemic, where everyone said, "Oh, well, we'll just go remote. We'll just," and that's keeping focused on the education side. There are many pockets of needed access, just having the machines themselves. And you mentioned you have some companies that are doing just that. Robert, what are your thoughts? What else could some of our other businesses, we think about it, especially at IBM, we were 95% work from home on day 2 with plenty of access, and changed our Indian team to 99%, which all of them didn't have access. That's fine when we're talking our global. What should we be thinking about here in Austin? What are your thoughts? What could we do to increase that?
Yeah, quite simply, the most important thing we can do is provide access and connectivity and devices. And we've been working with Michael Dell and his team on this, working with the Verizon Group and AT&T. We have one of our companies, Power School. We basically cover a large number of school districts in the U.S. And so we went through and did an actual ranking and said, okay, which of the school districts have students who don't have access to broadband? And so we're bringing what I call localized solutions and say, okay, we can provide the learning management system through Power School. And then we go to the connectivity provider and say, look, in this neighborhood, 32% of the people don't actually have broadband, and that affects 54,000 students. And trying, again, to convince the AT&Ts and the Verizons and others to now provide that access. It might be through cellular or some other capacity, but to the broadband. And then, of course, Michael and his team and the group at Microsoft as well have said, listen, we will look to provide, low-cost access to devices. So again, I call it a gang tackle approach with various business leaders. So, to the extent that there are gaps and holes, it's important that those are identified, and then business leaders actually take the lead to try to solve those issues until we can come up with what I'll call more publicly related solutions and building out infrastructure for broadband. The interesting thing about that is once you have actually built out that capacity for education, it actually enables small to medium businesses to have access. And oh, by the way, it enables telemedicine to now be delivered to those same communities. So, that basic infrastructure provides multidimensional impact on the communities that they would serve. So I think those are the things that we ought to think about. And, the large corporations and ways to finance it. Bank of America just issued this Equality Progress Sustainability Bond, which is a way they issued a $2 billion bond that every large corporation, public corporation, can issue these and use that capacity and use that capital to actually solve some of these very specific problems in these deserts in these communities.
All right. Well, you think about our community. I'm going to transition because you hit on something, Robert, about this knock-on effect. We take care of our education side, and it then affects also our small businesses and then our major players here in Austin. And ultimately, those engines are fueled by skills. And at Vista, you of course run on meritocracy. You look for, based on skills and merit, what can in your many companies, they look for those skills and people advance on that. What could we do as businesses across Austin and Central Texas to really focus on our skills base? What could we do to grow that so that we can be differentiated? We can attract those talents that want to work at the places where skills are appreciated, as well as build those some 60+% that finding themselves displaced out of other jobs right now in the current environment. I
think the most important thing, like I said, is invest in education, not just K through 12, but in companies. Invest in your training systems. I mean, one of the things that we do is build a training infrastructure in each one of the businesses that we make investments in, control investments in. And we leverage our infrastructure, which we call Vista University, to deliver, learning management capacity to those companies to, teach and train on everything from how to be a better programmer to how to understand RPA, how do you understand machine learning. You can actually get a nano degree in our companies in AI and ML. And it takes dedication and focus, but every company needs to think about. And in this age of digital educational platforms, it isn't, once you have built a curriculum, you can go to a one-to-many pretty effectively and on their timetable and time frame. So, leveraging those sort of systems, I think, will improve the skills. It adds another value and element as to why somebody wants to work at that company, because it's an ongoing skill development. We also have training programs for, entry level and, kind of the next level, and, programs up to the CEO, where they get an opportunity to work together, learn from each other. And we are doing those things remotely. We just finished one of our, latest Pinnacle classes, which is just a level below the C-suite or the CEO, and we did it all digitally. And we had people from all over the world who were in that C-suite participate in this program, and I had a chance to interact with them a couple of times. But leveraging systems like this, where you have a chance now to do shared learning and experiences, even though we can't get together in person, is truly one of the outgrowths of what we this digital environment, and it can be as effective as being in person. So every company should be thinking about, how do you build in learning and training systems that can be accessed, in some cases together, and in some cases separately at home or off work time, to build individual employee skill sets.
Now, I'm telling you, as I talk with you, Robert, I know they're probably looking at us saying, yeah, this conversation, these two can talk forever, which would be great. I'm enjoying the extra. I just two questions here, as we're just about on time. One is focused on Vista, because I love to talk about it. I love to say, ask me, have you heard of Vista? Do you know Robert Smith? I mean, people smile and I go, that's in Austin, right? Yeah. And I go, yes. I said, it's a man that could live anywhere in the world. He's in Austin. His firm's in Austin. He's there. So why Austin? I mean, what do we have?
Austin has, a couple of wonderful elements associated with it, and then one really bad one, which I'll tell you about. I think the most wonderful thing is what I call the people, the culture, a dynamic that people want to work. In the early days of Vista, we would go out and, spend a bunch of time. We still do it, but, I don't do it as much as I used to, but, going in diligence at a company and actually sit in their offices. And I noticed, you notice work ethic. You notice if the parking lot is empty at 8 o'clock in the morning and empty again at 3:30 in the afternoon, or people are showing up to work on time or early and leaving at 7, 8, or 9 in the evening. And I'm not arguing that everybody should do that, but in what we noticed was in Austin and Texas in particular, there was a really strong work ethic. And I think that's probably one of the most important things. You have the University of Texas there. We like university towns. It brings a whole different energy level to entry-level employees. These are young, ambitious people who really want to strike out in the world, and they've just finished their degrees, or are working as interns while they're finishing their college education. And they bring a whole not just the excitement and energy and enthusiasm, but optimism about life in the future that is infectious. And I think that's another important element that we look to embrace in Austin. The business community is a supportive business community. Our businesses are global, but we have found that we've had great support in our local business community of people who want to see us successful, because they know it creates jobs, creates infrastructure, creates tax revenues, creates a whole uplift for the entire community. Obviously, the music is wonderful in Austin. I'm a big, as you know, that fan of all different genres, types, and styles of music. And the only thing I'd complain about in Austin is the cedar pollen, which I'm just horribly allergic to. So, I suffer the fate of that.
Same.
When I first got there, it didn't affect me. Now it's just horrible. But outside of that, it's a wonderful place.
Amazing how it builds up. Now, I'll close with a question. On your insights here on education are I think, very evolved and deep in the thought that you've thought it through. Now you're the son of educators, two doctoral educators. Mm-hmm. And, how's that shaped your views? And then what some last thoughts, for those that are listening, from those that are, aspiring to take their education to the next level and really make an impact. What are you, from son of educators, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. One, go deep in the areas that you have you have some interest in education. And if you're, looking to be an engineer, go learn how to be a really good engineer, the best engineer. Find people around you who have that same sort of thought. And I'll call it, when you're in school, beyond going to football games on the weekend, actually spend time talking about how you use your skill and practical application of that skill into some areas of interest. Think about how you can be more holistic in your approach to business and your approach to work and approach to life. And, try to think about what I call the elegant solutions of sustainability. We all have to think about how do we create a more sustainable outcome, because, we're finding there's an exhaustion of resources across multiple areas in our global economy and in Texas in particular. And we need to think about how we become more thoughtful about renewable and sustainable elements in business. And I think one of the most important things there is, think about the ecosystem. So, you call it, diversity and inclusion shouldn't be a line item. It should be a way of life. For all of us, we should think about how do we build a more holistic, sustainable community as opposed to, continued separation of opportunity for folks. And I think if we approach it and you approach it as a young person that way, you will find a fulfilling and wonderful life. Look, we're not all perfect. We will make mistakes along the way. And, hopefully we will forgive each other for those mistakes. But as you move forward, we should all be thinking about the same goals of improving the quality of life for all citizenry on the planet.
Well, thanks, Robert. And thanks for the thoughts and the insights here. It's been an enjoyable conversation between us here as we both fight the pollen, but enjoy the conversation. And for all those that had, as we listen, we'll move to our next part of the program. Again, Jason Kelley, Robert Smith, we've enjoyed speaking to all of you. Take care, Robert.
You too, Jason. Good to see you.
Good seeing you.